Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is the game changer during the chess tournament. Thank you for making time for us. My name is Diana Matroos. I'm a journalist and anchor for BNR News Radio, but so honored to be your host today because we have a very important business topic to discuss. AI, artificial intelligence. What can you expect? Interesting insights and trends. We will share different angles of AI and show how it has changed the world of chess, but also the world of production and industry over the years. What are the lessons learned? What are opportunities? But of course, also what are threats? And what can production and industry learn from chess? And also vice versa. Let me introduce you to our esteemed panel. Menno van der Winden. He is the General Manager Advanced Analytics at Tata Steel Netherlands. Professor Max Welling. He is a research chair in machine learning at the University of Amsterdam and is a distinguished scientist at Microsoft. Welcome. Then Natasha Regan, a chess player and an award-winning chess author, best known for her book Game Changer, the name of our event, a bestseller, and was launched here a few years ago.
Launched here 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Yeah. Great that you're back here. And Peter Heine Nielsen, also welcome, a Danish chess player, chess grandmaster, and also the coach of world champion Magnus. How's the match going?
So far, not too much has happened, but he's slightly better, so I'm a bit optimistic of how it's going to be today.
Okay, but he has to win, right? Because losing is not pleasant for a chess player.
Not exactly, and also he's the world champion, and he's half a point behind the guy he's playing, so it would be great if he wins today.
Okay, welcome everyone. Before we go more in depth, Menno, of course today Tata was all over the news. And I think it's good that we address this first because there is an RIVM paper. And this stated that Tata Steel emissions are more polluting than expected. And there's a difference between the independent RIVM numbers and the Tata numbers. This is not pleasant news today.
No, of course not. And it's any impact that we have on our neighbors, our surroundings, on ourselves is of course to be avoided, specifically when it comes to health. So we need to take this, and we are taking this extremely seriously, because we're there to make steel, and we should do that in the cleanest and greenest possible way, and that is our objective, and that's what we strive to. So, of course, this type of reports are to be studied in great detail, because it's a serious business.
Yeah. Also, the RIVM will investigate more. Yeah. But they also every headline is now that the toxic emission of Tata is more than expected, even 1,000 times higher.
Yeah. We got the report this morning, and also in the preparation of this, I haven't had time to read it, let alone study it. So I don't know the details behind those numbers in great detail, because but it is about the impact that we have on the environment. So if there's a measured impact on the environment, as is in the objective of the RIVM report, then we need to do everything to reduce that, and that's what we're doing. So we have our programs, it's called the Roadmap Plus, if you like, and this is to indeed reduce exactly the substances that are described in the RIVM report. Yeah. So that is what we invest in and what we aim for.
And the gap in numbers, it's not a way of cheating, because we also know different stories about diesel and cheating over there with the numbers.
Yeah, I've worked with the company for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's cheating, because that's not the company I work for. That's not what I expect. So, but as I said, it's about really diving into the details and see where any discrepancies come from.
Okay.
And that's how we need to address this.
Yeah, and of course, this is not the topic of today's session, but we really should address this, of course, because everyone knows this news
and it's
today.
reality, so it's fine to talk about it.
Is there in some way also an AI aspect?
Yes.
Because it's about more.
And this is the great thing about AI. Almost in everything there is an AI aspect, but I think AI will be one of the key enablers to help us to reduce our impact on the direct environment. We've done so in the past, and we will do so more in the future. So it is definitely all about gathering the right data, building the right models, and implementing those models so they make a real impact on real life. And I think that is a perfect segue to what we're discussing today, because you can use AI for chess, or you can use AI for many other things.
That's
and
right.
one of the things you can use it for is to really improve these type of emissions.
Before we go more in depth, I think it's interesting to ask you all this opening question. What was a personal AI opener for you, or what excites you the most?
Well, for me, it was the 5th of December 2017. I'm the coach of the world champion. I'm preparing a game for him with the usual tools I do, something called Stockfish, which I think is the best and the most knowledgeable thing about chess in the world ever. I work for the best player in the world. We should be the pinnacle of information. But then suddenly comes this report showing that something called AlphaZero has completely crushed the program we are using. I mean, I would have said that is completely impossible. But if I hadn't seen it, I would think that just can't be done. It basically felt like aliens with a much more superior coming. So, well, basically I see myself, I'm here in the program as a witness to say this actually works, and this can give a completely different level of understanding of something extremely complex that humans has done for thousands of years. And I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it. That's simply how powerful it was.
Natasha, what excites you the most?
Actually, it's pretty much that same day in 2017. Although I as well as chess, I play Go, and just a little bit before that, there was a self-taught artificial intelligence that took on a big match against the top human player and won. And just the fact that it was completely self-taught, I found that very exciting.
Max?
For me, it was the realization that AI can have a major impact in science more generally, and in sustainability in particular. So I've been in machine learning all my life, and I've seen, nice applications, but only very recently AI is making an impact on chemistry and biology in order to build more sustainable products.
Yeah, so we can use it to make impacts
Yes.
for the future. Menno?
Yeah, for me, and maybe I was just late to the game or simply not smart enough, it's very well possible, but for me it became really exciting when I saw that AI solutions can be truly creative. Before I was more or less in a more deterministic mindset that I think, AI can fit and it can reproduce and but it can come up with solutions that we haven't come up with before. And I think it's very well illustrated in your book that you see moves that are really new, that they weren't in the data set because there was no data set effectively, it was self-taught, and it comes up with truly new things, and that's not exclusively to chess. That is true in the general applications of AI.
So it really surprises.
It really surprises, and you come up
all
with
types of business.
with new things, and that is for me, I think, is exciting.
Yeah, opportunities and also downsides. But of course, we're going to talk about this some more later on. But before we go further, I would like to invite Professor Max Welling to go to the stage, because we have a short presentation, and Professor Max Welling is going to explain to us what the technology of artificial intelligence means.
Yes, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about perhaps surprising similarity between chess and steel production. So on the left-hand side here we have chess, and on the right of center we have a factory, a furnace where steel is produced. So the similarity is because a new program was introduced by a company called DeepMind. It was already discussed a minute ago. The program is called AlphaGo, and it beat the world champion in Go, and later this was called AlphaZero and was applied to chess. Now, how does that algorithm work? You can think of it as basically sort of a smart robot, but it's really a program that runs in the cloud that's doing some planning and thinking, and it's training itself to become better. And it can do a couple of things. It can make decisions, or it can perform actions on the world. For instance, for chess, it is moving your chess places, chess pieces, or it's and for instance for steel production, it's for instance adding chemicals to the furnace, or changing the temperature, or changing the pressure on the furnace. It will also observe certain things about the world. For instance, it will observe the position of the chess pieces for chess, and for steel, it will measure the pressure, or it will measure the temperature of the furnace. And then it has an objective, and the objective is to win the game, obviously, for chess. And for steel, this is to produce high quality steel, do it at little power consumption, and also little evaporation, let's say, of carbon into the air. And so this precise algorithm is underlying both chess as well as clean steel production. And so that's all powered by machine learning.
Thank you so much. Please join us again. And let's take it from here and see what chess and production and industry can learn from each other. Natasha, we already mentioned, of course, your book, Game Changer. Also the name of this event has won the most prestigious chess book award in the world in 2019. Yeah. So we can learn a lot from you for sure. But first, please elaborate some more. How was AI introduced in the world of... Okay, they're going to check your microphone. Yeah. How was AI introduced in the world of chess?
Yeah, so we first heard about AI. So I'm talking about AI, the neural net type AI. There was been computers in chess for many, many years. And in fact, computers have been stronger than the strongest chess player since really Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov. So chess players were kind of used to being able to learn from computers and computers being stronger. What was new in 2017, 2018, 2019 was this self-taught AI, so completely self-taught without any human knowledge in it at all. And that really hit the chess world kind of by storm, because DeepMind, the company that had built AlphaZero, had published 10 games played by AlphaZero, and they were very, very exciting games. So it wasn't just like previously chess players had thought of AI as being very good at calculating and being able to calculate much better than humans. But what was nice about these games was the style that AlphaZero played. So it wasn't afraid to give up material. It gave up 7 pawns in one game. I mean, It was some beautiful games. And the chess world sort of knew that there were things to learn from this.
But everyone was also shocked, right?
Completely shocked. Yeah. Because we had been using Stockfish before, which was the strongest traditional engine, which had calculated, but you needed a person always to say, a queen is a good piece, and you need rooks on open files, and you need all these positional features. What AlphaZero did that was different was it worked all that stuff out for itself. And also, we didn't realize that giving away material could be possible, or attacking chess in this way would be possible, because actually what computers had been teaching us before was that defensive chess was the way to go. Yeah. And actually, you don't want to be too risky. You don't want to try these things, because the computer will, by calculation, find a way to kind of beat back your attack. Yeah. But what AlphaZero did was find this kind of way through and attacking setups, so kind of ways of playing. So
it really surprises.
Surprises. It was so it did learn. Kind of, we've got these human heuristics or rules that when we learn to play chess, we learn it's a good idea to do certain things.
Yeah.
AlphaZero did learn these things, but it also learned sometimes where it was there were times where it was breaking those rules or doing things in a different way from what we'd learned, or doing things in a very effective way. And so what we were able to do from looking at those games was kind of bring out themes of how that the AlphaZero was playing.
Yeah.
And so an example, there's this pawn right at the edge of the board that traditionally we were taught, you don't really want to move that pawn. It's in front of your king. It's very dangerous. Don't do it. But AlphaZero against Stockfish, it was doing it all the time. It was pushing this pawn up the board quite early in the game, and
it changed.
It changed how.
completely.
Yeah, it changed kind of what things were possible on a chessboard. So
But also, Peter, I can imagine that is also a little bit frustrating, or did you
Well, I would
accept it?
say
like
on the
Kasparov?
contrary, before that, well, it was maybe frustrating, but when these things happened, it became extremely exciting because, I'm working for Magnus, who is the strongest player in the world, but sometimes it's difficult to win games because you need to, the game is kind of drawy. Suddenly there was a lot of more possibilities, and we tried to exploit them to the maximum. And Natasha was lucky. She got sort of backstage access to AlphaZero. So when her book was out, we were reading it here, of course, in 2019, and was trying to implement it as quickly as possible. So basically it was like an arms race. You were trying to drag out all the information and try to implement it as quickly as possible. So it was an extremely exciting phase for us.
So exciting, and you took it as an opportunity, right?
Very much so. I mean, imagine that we basically thought that we have completely mapped out chess, and I would have sworn that it was not possible to add so much information, and suddenly it comes. Well, then of course you try to implement it. I mean, chess, the basic purpose of chess is to beat an opponent. So we try to get every advantage we can. And it was an extremely exciting time. And she said that it gave a lot of hope of attacking chess. Now, unfortunately, it has also reinforced the defensive side. So now it's a bit less exciting. But there was really some years which was the golden age where we were trying, and chess had a very exciting moment there. But I think also what should be pointed out that this was real AI, while we have all used computers before, and like Deep Blue, we thought that was AI. It was only with AlphaZero we got real intelligence, while the other one was actually just a strong calculating force, strong computers, which made it look like intelligence, while this seems to be actual intelligence.
Professor Max Welling, you explained earlier also a lot of times that there's a difference between the intelligence system, but also sometimes they're a little bit stupid as well.
There's very many different kinds of intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And human intelligence is actually only one type of intelligence, and there's a huge spectrum. So even a simple calculator, in some sense, is smarter than us in calculating things quickly, right? But AlphaGo is smart at chess and Go. AlphaZero is good at chess, but not good at riding a bike, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. And so humans excel in flexible AI. They can do very many things very quickly, very well. So I can learn a lesson, in England, driving on the left-hand side of the road with my car, and then I move to another country and I can drive the same car without any extra experience on the right-hand side of the car. So we're extremely flexible and we learn very quickly.
Yeah, we're going to talk some more about the human aspect as well, and how they can help each other. But first of all, Menno, at Tata, what are the opportunities and the examples you see if it comes to AI?
Well, there are endless. I could talk really. The whole show will now be about this, and that would be maybe not that interesting to listen to for many people. But just to take a few examples, the blast furnaces that Max just showed, if we are using AI programs to predict their behavior. Because of that, we can control them in a way that leads to a higher stability. A higher stability means that we have to have fewer interventions, and that is good for costs, but also good for the amount of CO2 that comes out of the blast furnace. It's a bit technical to go into details, but that's one example. Another example is, for instance, we have now these models that predict when things go wrong, and that can go wrong in quality, but it can also be going wrong in the sort of from the maintenance side. So rather than being surprised by what we call unplanned downtime, we can prevent it. And that is, of course, very beneficial for us. But again, a stable process is a cleaner process, and also you don't produce any rejects, which is total waste. Yeah, then you have done all the effort and you've made all the emissions, and you have to do it again. So that type of applications are very powerful to improve our processes, both from a business point of view and from an environmental point of view.
Yeah, and we know this is very important.
And it is super important. It's not for nothing that we are in the news for that.
And we're going to talk more about sustainability later on. What surprised you the most?
I think there's two learnings. One is that for us, the most difficult thing, and maybe the same in chess, it is not so much to build the model, but it is to make sure that we implement the model correctly. So that people will actually change their behavior because of the things that the model tells them. And of course, you could say, well, if you make a self-driving car or a self-driving steel plant, then there is no people, then you have a different challenge. But we, that will be there for a long time, have people that work with AI, and to make sure that these people have some basic understanding at the management level, so they take the right decisions to implement or not to implement, but also on the shop floor on how to use these things. And I think that is a key learning for me that is really surprising, because I thought, we need data scientists and all the modeling and da-da-da. But yes, that is true, you do need that, but you need to focus on how to implement your findings. Okay, only when it hits the road, when things really change, then you are successful. You're not successful when you've built a great model.
Yeah. So that's a very important takeaway. Peter, can you give us an example how AI works when preparing Magnus for a game?
Well, in chess we have used computers and calculations for a very long time, and this neural networks has actually been built in the same way so that the output is the same. So actually we were very trained in using them. This we have been doing for at least 25 years now. But of course there was a sort of qualitative difference, and I think the most difficult or most exciting thing to get used to is that we always talked about human intuition and computing power in calculations, but we are actually getting used to that computers has intuition, and this is very strange for us, and somehow that the computer's intuition might actually overrule the human's intuition, and this is we are trying to get used to that. We are so stuck in that our own beliefs are true, and there are things we have to change, and this is maybe the most difficult.
I think it's very interesting because the chess tournament is now also here in the Netherlands, and they've interviewed chess grandmasters here at the chess tournament, and it's about this same aspect that you mentioned already. So let's watch what they have to say.
Yeah, I grew up analyzing with a board, but things are very different now. Most of the analysis is done on the computer.
Most of the time I work with computer, with engines.
AI and its legacy will be answered in the future.
The engines are so much stronger than humans that you tend to believe what they say.
Changed the game, the way we see the game very differently.
I sometimes think over the board and try to find human ideas. And also use computer as well.
I think I'm more scared in terms of the future of chess of computers just processing faster, and then if they become a little bit stronger. I worry that one day chess can be weakly solved.
If I don't use technology, I'll be just lagging behind against all my colleagues, because you have to use it, kind of.
Luckily, I still think that day is very, very far away, and I think it will be after I'm retired, many, many years in the future.
Solving chess is way, way out there, and frankly, I hope that it won't be in a very, very long time.
AI generally brought a lot of new ideas, and a lot of things maybe people would have discovered eventually, but just made it much, much quicker. You want to learn from the best, and currently the best is simply the machines, not the humans. We lost this battle.
We lost the battle. Does this hurt, Natasha?
Well, we're kind of, as human chess players, we're kind of used to computers being stronger than us at the calculation. But it doesn't mean we've lost the battle. In fact, people do like watching computers play chess, but they even more like watching a great game between two humans. They like the emotional struggle. They like the personalities involved. They like... So it doesn't mean humans are losing out. Humans are using...
but I see a lot of different reactions in this video. So you see chess players that are very exciting about it, and other chess players...
It's changed the way people have to work at their chess. So, and I think you might even see a generation effect. So the younger players are used to using computers to do their study. Some of the older players who weren't on that video, but find it actually quite a struggle to revamp things they've learnt about chess that now there are new things to learn. So it's kind of tough to keep up to date with it. It can be.
But it is a struggle for some people. It is a struggle.
I think some people, certainly some of my friends, they would say, I don't want to use to use computers. That doesn't mean they can't play chess, right? What it does mean, if they're trying to compete at the very top level, then it's going to be hard to get it into the game with a good position or play on even terms. So the computer does help, or training with an engine or with AI does help you play. And so if you don't do that at all, then
you have a problem.
You can still play, right? So I know.
But Magnus, the world champion, it's crucial for him, the AI. Without AI, it wouldn't be possible to be a world champion.
Well, it's a premise that there is AI. There is AI which is stronger than the humans. I think if AI didn't exist, it would be even better for Magnus. He would play worse, but his competitors would play even more worse. I mean, if anything, it levels the information that we can get. But well, for us, it's not a matter of it's good or bad. It's just there. But also, well, I think it's extremely exciting because I've spent the last at least 35 years thinking about chess, and suddenly we can do it on a higher level. It's just very interesting from an academical point of view that you can, well, you know, problems you have thought a lot about, you get corrected, you get new ideas. I mean, it's
Can you
just...
give an example, interesting insight?
Well, that would be certain kind of chess openings and such. And, well, I have been working for world champions for now 15 years. Problems that we were thinking of 10, 12 years ago, we actually are corrected. And we were supposed, again, to be, well, at the absolute top. And we were at the time compared to other humans, but we could see we were quite wrong. And no, it's just very interesting that we get such a better understanding of chess. And it's, I think it's academically very interesting. But of course, for these guys, their job is to win a chess tournament. And so chess is interesting that it's so competitive among humans. And then we have these tools and we try to use them in order to sort of do the best performance. But well, they don't have access to it during the game. So as a sport, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, but it is a role shift we see everywhere, and also Menno, I think within Tata you see the same role shift.
Well, you definitely see that you need to train people up. Yeah, and I guess it's the same in chess, and it's. The blast furnace is still the same blast furnace, more or less, but the tools that you have to run it, they change. And therefore the people who use those tools need to change, and they need to learn new skills. And I guess that is going to be more and more in the future, and therefore this whole teaching and training bit, and I think Max has a key role in that, will become more and more important, because at the end of the day, it's still very much a people's business, but it is augmented by the AI, and it will be very much influenced by the AI.
Yeah. What is needed in times of the future and to train people in the field of AI? Should we train the main experts, or should we hire extra data scientists?
So the first I'd like to say what I find beautiful about what I just saw is that it's actually a beautiful analogy with what's going on in society. There's a lot of anxiety for AI in society that they will replace their job. or that they become super intelligent and dangerous and things like this. So it's actually a beautiful parallel in some sense. So technology is going very fast and increasingly so. And it's somewhat surprising, I would think, that we are not teaching a lot of AI or even computer science in high school and even in sort of regular studies, which are not computer science itself. So if you go study science, biology or something like this, I think you'll have to wait until your master's maybe before you'll see any AI.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, or data science. And I think this will really have to change because this such as a core technology that pervades everything our daily lives. We want everybody to know something about, what runs on our phone, who is getting our data when we interact with, with computers. And so we should really put this in our core curricula.
Yeah. How is this in the UK, Natasha?
Yeah.
Is it in the core curriculum for students?
Not at school.
Okay.
It's not in core curriculum. Like even at university, it depends on what subject you're doing. So if you're doing like computers, that kind of thing, then yes, the course will include it. And I think in a few places there are degree courses which are just based completely on AI. In the whole, though, it's just a one part of a computer course, and then the other subjects, like if you're talking about science or maths, then it wouldn't necessarily make it into the university degree. Although there are a lot of people studying data science, though, and coming into industry with a data science degree, and those people are extremely well sought after. So I do some recruitment in my company, and we're always very interested if someone does have data science on their CV, and so lots of people are really interested in learning that. So I'm just absolutely sure the direction is that there'll be more courses offering that.
Yeah.
And it's just growing and growing, and anyone of that age just going into education, then it seems to be a really good thing to do economically.
Will shift during time.
Yeah.
But for now, I think maybe there's a problem. Also business-wise, we have a lot of viewers that also need AI in their business, different kinds of business, like Tata. Do you see problems when it comes to the human aspect?
That's a very broad question.
Yeah.
If we look at it, the sort of the war on talent or the finding the right people, then I see that it is possible, and we do invest heavily in that, to train people up. So I fully agree with your statement that more mechanical engineering or whatever should have a larger component of data science in them. But even if they haven't, then we've proven, we've trained hundreds of people, that it's possible to train these people up to it's not a sort of Google type of build the next AlphaZero or that type of data science level, but it is adequate to improve. I think it's very important that we train everyone up. So you need to train up your management, because if they are still from the, say, previous era, to put it politely, you might miss a few opportunities because people are not informed. So that is something that we invest in. But for instance, I also teach at our every so often at our company school where we train our future operators, and I teach them about data. And one day I provoked them with saying, well, look, guys, it's a terrible situation because we will end up with a steel plant that has one man and his dog, and that's everyone who's going to be employed there. And
what was the reaction?
That wakes them up, and that is exactly what it's there for. And then we talk about what will happen and what won't happen. And the other day, at the end of the lecture, one of the students came to me and he said, "Look, Menno, it's not my job as an operator that's going to change that much. It's your job as a manager that's going to be made obsolete, because all you're doing is processing information and then trying to make it into a decision."
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's spot on, of course.
Yeah.
That is really what's going to happen. So in that sense, it's a super exciting time.
Yeah, and also a super exciting time for you personally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you work on these skills?
My own skills.
Yeah.
Well, I try to study as much as I can, but I have to admit my team is miles ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I learn from them.
You learn from that.
That is definitely my learning method. Yeah.
Well, we heard a lot of opportunities earlier on, but of course there's also a fear, and we also mentioned it briefly, that humans will no longer be needed if AI continues to grow. Do you think that's the case, Professor Max Welling?
Well, at this point, all the evidence points in the other direction, I would say. So at this point, well, if jobs will change, that's clear. A chess player's job changes, but everybody's job will change. But it also means that the economy will adapt and change, and new jobs will be created, like data scientists, on the side. So at this point, I don't think we see any evidence that there's going to be less jobs, but we see evidence there's different jobs. Now, how this will play out in the long run, I cannot see, right? But it could indeed be true that we have a completely self-automated, steel production system. In the long run, I think that will be the case. And then maybe we will all be psychologists or,
Yeah, then we have different kind of jobs, right?
Yeah, care for the elderly or something like this.
Yeah, but, so there will also be a benefit. What do you both think about the chess world? Comparing the humans with AI, how quick will it go?
I mean, well, you can argue that this stage is already over. The computers are much better. If you want to, you for free can log on to many chess sites where two much stronger computers play against each other than the humans we are watching here. But luckily, people prefer to watch humans play against each other and such. So. And the same with my job, I'm a helper, but I'm sure you could get a computer that can both play cards in the evening and look at chess openings, but they still prefer the human aspect. So,
like Natasha also mentioned, huh?
Yeah. I mean, chess is still at its core an entertainment sport, and the most interesting thing is having two humans sort of slug it out against each other. So I think we are a bit atypical in that sense. We're not going to go obsolete to that extent. Maybe exactly if everything is taken over, manual job is done by computers. You have to watch something, and then well, maybe
we all watch chess.
Yeah, but we have to zoom in the ethics part. Because, and you say, well, our world is different, but there's a fear for AI. And of course, Max Welling knows this as well. According to former head of Google, Moga Dutt, for instance, AI could harm people. Do you also have fears? Like Moga Dutt?
Fear is never a very constructive emotion. So I try to stay away from it. But it is clear that the impact can be huge, and therefore it can be good or bad. It in itself, it doesn't have an ethical system, so it depends on how you deploy it. What I do see in our job, that you need to be careful, and it's not so much the AI per se where you need to care. It needs to be what use cases do you deploy and what data do you use for those use cases. So, for instance, in an area like HR, where people like who gets promoted and who doesn't, I think we would stay away from HI solutions there. Also because it is extremely difficult to get a fair AI solution there, which is truly non-biased and stuff like that. And that's it's not the AI, it's the data that's biased. So you need to be careful. Yeah, and that is something that I'm sure there is other industries where that theme is much more dominant than in ours. When you're in banking or in policing or stuff like that, and we've all seen the examples there. So we follow also what happens there. But also in running a company like a steel plant, you need to be aware. You can't be naive. You can't say, well, it's AI, so therefore it's good. That's too simplistic.
Yeah. Also, when it comes to toxic emissions, again, and you have a lot of models with AI and predicting a lot of stuff, when this goes wrong or makes wrong decisions, then you have a big problem as a company.
True, but that is, also true for non-AI solutions. If you have a person doing a job and he makes or she makes a mistake, therefore there can be very big consequences. So in that type of thing, I think we should be just smart and say, okay, where do we trust the human decision and the human discretion, and where do we say, well, actually, the risk taken by implementing an AI solution is much lower than the risk that you take by trusting a human to do this job.
Yeah.
So
well,
all in all,
we for foreign viewers, we have a big scandal here in the Netherlands, the child support scandal. And it was from a government side point of view, and AI did caused a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but it's again, that's not the AI that's doing it. It's the data that was used to train those models.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if the bias in the data is then sort of reflected in the AI solution, you get into that's of course the risk that AI is scalable.
Yeah.
So where a human can take one decision, an AI can take an infinite amount of decisions, and therefore these type of things go bad at a huge scale quite quickly.
And we see it in a lot of places. Also, when it comes to the RIVM models with Corona, they're also mixed up with the models. Or okay, we have to be, but they say it themselves as well. The models are not that.
I think anyone who builds models knows about the strengths and weaknesses of their own models. And I think people who say my model is perfect, you should distrust greatly, even if it's AlphaZero.
Yeah. What fears do you have?
Well, that's an interesting question. So my fears are not so much with technology. I fear people more than technology in some sense, and in particular, powerful technology in the hands of people. So we wage wars still in this century. We wage wars with horrible. Nowadays, AI-powered weaponry. That's very dangerous. We mine the planet for its resources, and somehow we are not able to figure out that we are really destroying the planet. We create climate change. This is all humans who do this, right? Yeah. So, and my hope is, in fact, that AI technology can help us also prevent some of these disasters that are coming at us, like the climate change. I think we really have to do something about it. We have, 20, 30 years to really turn it. And I think we really do need AI technology to make it happen.
So you see mostly opportunities and less threats. The humans...
I also
fear the humans. Okay, but let me elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I think the biggest threat I see is that AI technology can manipulate people quite easily. So I think we are quite weak in defending ourselves against AI, grabbing our attention, changing our opinions about politics or about things, making us believe certain things, or even drawing us at some point in some virtual world and where it's so much better than in the real world that many people might actually get addicted to these kinds of meta-universe or something. So I think there are, the world is changing very quickly and there are dangers, and I think we have to be wise about using this technology.
And when you say we have to be wise, what should we do? How can we, what should we do?
Well, the first thing is public discourse like this one. So I think that's very good to inform the public and to debate it. So that's the first thing that's really important. Also educate our politicians, because they don't understand what all this technology is really. And regulate. So I think in Europe we are sort of starting to regulate AI. But I think we need more people that think hard about, what is the best way to regulate AI? Because there's a huge number of opportunities. There's obviously societies that you can create with it, which we don't want. And we need to think now about which type of society we want to live in and we want our children to live in. And then we have to regulate, the AI that we allow in our society to operate. So for instance, do we allow face recognition in our streets? Well, I would argue we don't, because it's it's privacy. It's an offense of our privacy, etc. So we have to think and also
can be biased.
Yeah. So for the bias, that's interesting. I want to say that because there's a lot of discussion about bias. There's this program also called Reference Man on television, which I watch. Is very interesting. But people forget to say about bias that humans are very biased.
Yeah.
And in fact, there is an opportunity here, which is that yes, algorithms can be biased and they can discriminate. And we
also know, we already know that this is happening.
That's happening, but
that's the frustrating thing. I think that we, with all this knowledge, the algorithms are biased too.
Yeah, so they can be biased, and so what we need to do is we need to test these algorithms for these biases. So you can just test it like you test a car or an airplane. You can say, is this actually discriminating against minorities? But once you have tested it thoroughly, you can code it away. You can take it out, and you can make it less biased than humans.
Yeah.
And so there's a real opportunity, I think, here. But we have to be careful never to bring algorithms in practice that have these biases built in, regulate it, and then grab the opportunity to make them less biased than humans.
Yeah. This debate, is it also happening in the chess world, or do they not feel the danger at all?
I think with chess engines is probably not creating a risk to life or anything like that. Like you took a driverless car, right? You don't want to use that thing if it's going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
With chess engines, it's not quite that. But it does tie into some of the things we've been discussing. It's a sort of question of when you trust the engine, or how much you rely on yourself and how much you rely on what AI is telling you. So I think one thing is to not throw away everything you've built up or you've learnt yourself and still trust yourself. Because like there've been in history psychological experiments, and you might have everyone in the room saying an answer, and then the last person in the room, and they test, do you say the answer which piece of string is longer? And everybody said this one, but it was set up that it was actually the shorter string.
Yeah.
And then quite a lot of the people in the room then went along with the answer that was obviously wrong, just because no one else, you can't have everyone else in the room being wrong. And so a similar sort of thing with AI, if it's always coming up with a really good answer, then I guess the temptation is to stop trusting your own thoughts and start trusting the AI thought.
Can you give an example of this particular problem?
I mean, I think something like for a chess player, then it could be just the engine recommends. The engine plays certain moves in an opening, and you then might just follow that. Now that might, then there's a couple of risks with that. One is that the move might not be good. That's maybe not such a risk, but the other risk is you just don't understand it, right? So you go down, play all these moves, get to a position, and then you just don't understand what to do next.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't actually helped you. So you want to kind of work with the AI and work with the results you're getting in a way that you still understand.
Yeah.
So if you're playing a game of chess, you're still the one in control. It's not the machine. You're in control. You're responsible for your moves.
Yeah.
And then you can use the machine to help you. So you don't want to just copy.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you recognize the things that Natasha mentioned?
Quite. I think, you started asking about the ethical aspect, and I think it's important that in chess, there's no such thing as ethic. The whole point is to do maximum damage on your opponent. So it's actually, that's why we do it. I think for us, it's just amazing that, we become the petri dish to some extent of AI, and that our sort of completely artificial world actually can help in the real world. And I think that we're very proud and very happy to see. But sort of, it's clear that the thoughts you can hear from them about real life, they're not really, doesn't matter for us. It's our world is exactly a black and white world where, if I win, you lose.
Yeah. But what Natasha mentioned, it's very important that the chess player also trust his own opinion and not be too relied on.
Only if it's right. So it's. This is.
But how do you train Magnus to?
I don't train Magnus. Also, I'm also How do you coach the biggest genius in chess on the world? You don't, but you try to expose him to certain types of knowledge. For instance, you get the Natasha and Matthew's book and you put it on his table, and he's able to absorb some of the ideas. Then you specialize in these things so that you can have a meaningful conversation with him. But it's not like I tell him this and that. No, this is not how it works. He operates on a different level than me. But you can try and help him in the direction where he will see things that I'm not capable of, but that probably exists.
Yeah, but it's important to have the dialogue around this topic.
Not necessarily, but to some extent, yes. But of course, still, he is the best in the world now and maybe the best ever. To have a dialogue is already complicated because we are on different levels. But of course, I mean, that's why I'm checking everything with the computer, to be able to have a dialogue with a, well, I have to admit, the superior human being, at least in a chess sense.
Yeah. We have also a theme sustainability. Before we do that, what do you think, Natasha, the business of production and industry can learn from chess?
Well, chess has been kind of, I suppose the big shock was how the computer got better than chess, humans, in chess and in Go, and that we could actually learn from it. So it wasn't just, wow, that computer's clever, that's interesting. It's kind of that computer is coming up with these kind of ideas, and by seeing what it's coming out with, we can kind of learn from that. And I think if you're translating that into industry, it could be looking for, so it's AI is particularly good in areas of a lot of complexity where there are various things you could choose. So say research or something like that, where you could choose to research this or this or this or this. And AI won't necessarily give you the answer, but it can say which particular things might be likely to give you a good result. And then your scientist goes away and then carries on researching those. So it kind of points you in ways that are likely to give you good results. So it can save time of going down lots of dead ends if those are not likely to be giving you a good result.
This is a very good point. This was extremely fascinating for us who started to learn this new neural network, that they seem to have an intuition to point that, well, if you look in this area, there is a more likely than not there will be something interesting to find. Quite often they will be wrong, but they would really be good at pointing you with some kind of, for us it feels like intuition, that, well, we cannot say you exactly what, but have a look there. I mean, that they could actually have this feeling was amazing. And basically, well, I think our message is that this is actually big and it kind of works. I understand that we don't have to convince you because you know it, but a lot of people are extremely skeptical on this, and I think the role of chess is actually to say that, well, it kind of works and it's extremely important in the real world.
I think that is so true. I think your analogy that you're the petri dish of the real world, you're also the wake-up call for the real world. Yeah, it's really, this is big and this is only going to get bigger. And that it's also not optional. You know, chess, you could still say, well, I'll play amateur level or something like that. But in the real world, we can't be all amateurs in the real world. So it will be there, and it is up to us to make the most out of it. And given all the constraints by ethical thoughts, of course. But this is a really powerful tool that is for our generation to deploy. And we need to pick up the gauntlet and do it. I think that is super exciting to be in there. Maybe we are in the sort of offensive chess.
I envy you.
And it's really, really exciting. And it goes much broader than just steel manufacturing, of course.
Yeah.
But I also think it will take some time before an AI will tell me what research I need to do. Right. So we also have, there's some humility. It's you know, chess is a very structured game. But the world around us is very open-ended, right? And before an AI will tell me, you know, this is the type of research where you can find gems, I think that's very far away, I think. Because the human intuition is still special in that sense, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's also a little bit of relief that you that this is our plus as human beings.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think it's the human beings have something that I think AI will take a long time to develop. Yeah.
So the world of chess is much further with AI than.
And the reason is that it's extremely constrained, well-defined problem, right? It's the same thing as a doctor doing a diagnosis for, let's say, lung cancer from a X-ray. It's a very structured regime. You can collect lots and lots of data on that problem. You can get superhuman on that particular problem. But open-ended problems, like how to deal with life,
it's going to be open.
The next topic I want to discuss is sustainability, a very important topic, of course, these days, and Also, Max, you referred to it as well in the beginning of our conversation. Menno, what do you see for possibilities regarding sustainability and AI?
Well, for us, of course, sustainability is a existential issue. Yeah, it's go green or go bust. That's simple. So the challenge is enormous and very urgent. And I think that also through AI, but also through for our whole transition to hydrogen-based steelmaking, that in itself is not an AI solution. That is just good old thermodynamics and stuff like that. But the deployment of that and the efficiency and the stability of that type of solutions will go so much faster. And at the end, as you said in the whole climate change challenge, it's a race against the clock. So if AI makes us deploying these technologies faster, that's pure profit, because we will run out of time. Yeah, so we need everything there to go faster. So I think it will be an enormous help in deploying these type of technologies much faster, and therefore being faster to lower our impact. Because at the end of the day, we still use steel.
And you agree, of course.
Yeah, actually, I've bet my career on this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so I recently pivoted my career and started to work for Microsoft Research, who opens an office here in Amsterdam. And the message here is that, in the next 20 years, we will have to change, the materials that we will use, the fuels that we will use. We have to capture the carbon out of the air. And with AI technology or machine learning technology, we can start to develop and design completely new materials. So we can do chemistry and biology, but perhaps also drug design, ab initio from a clean slate by running computations on a computer with AI. And I think that this is really a revolution that's coming, and that might actually change completely our world. You can imagine that, if you would need, let's say, a material for something like a plastic that is biodegradable in 5 years or something like this, and you can just say, I want a plastic with these properties, and you do the computation with AI, and you'll get the material out, and then you synthesize, and you have it, right? So you might see an explosion of new materials that could populate our world, and that is much more sustainable and recyclable and stuff like that.
And also when quantum computing is added.
The quantum computing, it's a very interesting, but also a somewhat complicated question. But so the quantum computer it's been coming for the next 5 years for a long time already, right? More than 5 years for sure. So the current estimates is that 10 to 15 years out when we will see the first useful quantum computers. But they cannot do just any calculation. It's not just a replacement of a normal computer. They can do one thing particularly well. And that's why I think your question is so interesting. They can compute chemistry and physics very well, because the physics around us is quantum mechanics. So nature is quantum mechanical. And so with these quantum computers, we can actually simulate nature very efficiently and help us design these new materials. But that's about 10 years out, I think.
10 years. But what do we need to speed up the process? Because AI is a very, it has a lot of opportunities for sustainability plans. What do we need to speed up the process?
Again, I'm very happy you asked this, because I have one simple answer to this. Typically, the world isn't simple, but in this case, I think the world's simple. We need to start taxing pollution and carbon emissions. And the reason is, if we make it more costly, maybe Tata doesn't want to hear it, but if we make it more costly...
I was looking already.
If we make it more costly to do it, we will change the economy. So there will be all sorts of new initiatives that will spring up, new investment in green technology, in trying to get carbon out of the air, in producing hydrogen. But then the money will free up. So we need to get to a point where everybody will understand, every company will understand, our future economy is green. That's where we can earn our money, and that's where we need to invest in technology.
Yeah.
And I think Tata Steel actually does understand.
I couldn't
this,
agree
like
more
no
with you.
other
You know,
company.
a company that wants to make sort of carbon-free steel cannot be against taxing competing steel that isn't carbon-free. Yes, so it's not that is taxing is definitely a mechanism, and of course there is all kinds of debates to be had about carbon leakage and CBAM and all these things. So that needs to be sorted out. But in principle, that the future is green and that is the only future, that's a given.
Yeah.
What do you think is needed to speed the process?
I think we need to educate ourselves and we need to educate the public and we need to educate our young people. It's about studying, training. Because if we don't do that, then maybe you'll get some sort of an elite that goes sort of totally disconnected from what the rest of society wants. And that is in itself a very dangerous situation. But also what I said before, you need to implement these solutions. I have great admiration for what Max is doing, but at the end, it needs to be deployed in a real life situation. And that can only be done if the people in that area understand to some degree what you're doing. And
so it's about education, but maybe there are companies also watching that have problems with this aspect to get people more involved, because it's not only education, but it's also
it starts.
motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with the assessment that you need to know this, and I think it starts with the idea that this is great fun. Yeah, if once you have that, then the rest is more or less churning handles. So you need to realize that this is really an opportunity and it's super exciting, and we are indeed at that
so we
pivotal
can learn
position.
This from chess, I think.
I think it's like what you did. You embraced that technology rather than sort of brushing it aside or think, oh, it's different from what I did the 20 years before.
It's the most exciting I've seen in my career as
and that feeling, and I think that feeling needs to be imprinted in our colleagues and in our children and in the students. It is the most exciting thing that has been around for a very long time.
The most exciting thing, but a lot of people also in other businesses think, wow, not for me.
No, and
so
I'm sure people...
what are you going to do? What do you do within Tata to make people motivated?
I think of course we talk a lot about it. Yeah, so I do things like this only then inside the company. I think showing the results, showing the first steps that we've taken. Yeah, it's like Alpha Zero, showing the first 10 matches. It was just 10 matches in a paper.
It was extremely little.
That's not a very lot to go on. So showing those first 10 matches and then doing the equivalent in steelmaking. So showing the use cases that are deployed. And we started with use cases outside the company, even outside steelmaking. And then we build up our own portfolio of use cases. And you show the success and you show the enthusiasm. And that enthusiasm breeds new enthusiasm.
Natasha?
So we interviewed, as part of the book, we interviewed Demis Hassabis, who's the CEO of DeepMind. And what he was saying is it's kind of, there is some skepticism sometimes around AI and can it bring a benefit? And what he did, he started his project actually very, very small, but he got a couple of people working on it sort of all their time. And what he wanted was just it to show some response. Once it had shown some response, he knew he could then invest heavily in it and it would work. He sort of had that confidence it would work. But it was that very first step, and it was getting it to kind of, this was a Go playing one, getting it to reproduce some human Go moves. And once that had happened, it took them maybe, I think it was about 18 months before they got that kind of spark of something happening. But then once it did, it was really fast from there. So you get, the first bit is very hard, and then once you know you can do it, then you can really do it.
Yeah.
And he was saying
so you need this
he had the idea, like he had the idea,
the success, and then everyone. But isn't a transition also okay? Sharing success, I understand, but is it also daring to make mistakes?
Yeah, and talk about those mistakes.
Yeah,
that's fine. And I come from an R&D background, so we made mistakes for a living almost, and it's fine. And you can show where things don't work or where you've made assumptions that didn't pan out to be true, or that where you had data sets that weren't as great as you thought they would be, or sensors that didn't deliver what you... And that's all fine, because it shows also the people you talk to that it's not something that is a sort of steamroll thing that can't be changed. It's something that you build together, and that can be affected by the people involved in it. And so it's about communication, I guess, and it's about explanation, and it's about sharing the enthusiasm, but also to open up the books or to let people watch in your kitchen on what you're doing. And then typically people get excited.
Yeah, inspiration.
Yeah.
I agree. So and vision. So I think there need to be people who see further into the future. It's an investment. They see what's coming, and they inspire the people around it to start on that journey.
Yeah.
Which might take a time, because you'll fail a couple of times, right? And
Dare
so
to fail.
yeah, it's like in startups. People say it's fine. Fail 3 times, learn and go for the next startup, right? But in companies, you often see that you build a team and it doesn't work as you thought it worked, and then skepticism starts to emerge, and then it's brushed aside again. But you really have to have this long-term vision that this technology is really important. It is going to change the world and your company, and you should invest in it.
And if you look at the Netherlands, are you impressed of our long-term vision in general?
Well, not so much by the government. I think the government could certainly invest more in the Netherlands in AI. In companies, I think I see companies pick up, AI as an important topic and work on it. But obviously, we are not as far as in America, lots of companies in China, where things are going a lot faster. Yeah.
Today is also about learning from the world of chess and vice versa, the world of industry and production. And you're so energized all about this subject. Also, during the rehearsal, you asked a lot of questions. What are you most curious about their worlds?
I think it's you alluded to it a little bit already, is how do you avoid chess players from becoming computer monkeys that just are very good at remembering what would the computer do. Yes, because at some stage it's still Magnus who's at the chessboard, not a computer. And so maybe you'll get people that are very good at remembering certain types of configurations, and therefore know what the computer would do without knowing why or what is the strategy or how would it go further. And do you see a risk that we'll have chess players like that who are not traditional chess player who feel the game, if you like?
Well, of course there are some of that, but that's also because it's so competitive. I mean, it's being used creatively to exactly fight these kind of persons. And also you can say if you only replicate what the computer does, you are very easy to predict. And of course we try to exploit that all the time. And well, very often it becomes not about playing the best move according to the computer because you're playing a human, but you try to play a move that's actually as uncomfortable for the opponent. And the ideal thing is to have a surprising move that is not predicted by the computer, but that we have analyzed with the computer. So we are trying to constantly surprise, and this is what happens a lot of the time. For instance, you saw the recent World Championship match that Magnus won quite convincingly. He played quite some maybe suboptimal moves in the early stage of the game, but that was exactly to force the opponent to think of himself and not only to rely on that. So it becomes a very competitive sport like that, where you have to evaluate, well, is this move objectively the strongest by the computer, or is this move the best way to beat the human opponent? And this becomes a very interesting struggle, and we try to that. But it's, chess is different, that it's a competitive sport, and it's about exploiting human weakness. While, well, you are not, of course you're competitive to other companies, but also you're trying to make the world better, and you're trying to make technology better. So yours should be win-win, while ours is actually, it's a zero-sum game. So we are quite different to some extent in that sense.
Yeah.
So.
And are you also curious for some things in this world?
I am extremely curious, and also what he tells about that. He's giving theoretical examples. It would be great to see practical examples. How can this actually be implemented and make the world better? And also, we can see we had this sort of enlightenment where suddenly we saw strategies on a much higher level. This will also be very interesting to that. how good or bad was things when it was only human judgment, or is there sort of bigger layers of intelligence up there and such? This will be we were very curious about to see how this.
Well, it will take a long time.
Yeah,
this answer. Yeah, so
take
but
your time.
yeah, okay.
We have the time.
Good. I think firstly you would have to come and visit because there's nothing as exciting as a steel plant in real life. Yeah, it's so big and really impressive. So every time I go there, it still excites me. What you see is that, for instance, in steel making, there is still a lot of. This is what we do because we've always done it like this. It's like, of course, like chess. Yeah. And although we've made steel as a society for thousands of years, it is poorly understood from first principles. Yeah, like you're saying, designing drugs from ab initio, designing a steel plant ab initio, it's unthinkable. So we don't understand it really. So what you see now is that because of the modeling, you get an interaction. Yeah, if the model directs you in a certain direction, like say, oh, this and this and these parameters are very dominant in your model, then the scientists are inspired by that again to exploit that route. They say, well, if that is true, then maybe this and this and this is also true. Because I think what we see is that AI can be creative, but it's always within the data set that you give it. Yeah? And in that sense, AlphaZero is slightly different because it generates its own data. But if you traditional machine learning, it's within the boundaries of the data set. But even if you use that, then it can give you the levers to pull and the directions that you want to go into. And then, of course, we can create new data and we can retrain the model. And then it's sort of so it's a synergetic relationship. The problem, of course, is we do not have an ELO rating so easily to say, well, this is steel making at level 6 and this is 6.3, and so we don't have that. So it's not as easy to quantify in that sense, but it is beyond doubt, and we do measure the impact of our steel of our models. That we improve above the hundreds of years of optimization that we've already done, and we don't start from scratch. It's not like we inherited a steel plant and thought, "Oh, what are we going to do here?" You know. And it's also computers have been there for a very long time. You know, first computers in the Netherlands were introduced in Tata Steel to do all kinds of calculations. So we have, in that sense, a very similar sort of history of traditional computing power, more computing power, slowly transferring to AI type of solutions.
But now it's the processes are going much faster and faster and faster.
Of course.
So you have to innovate. You have to go with the flow, but also
we have to go faster than the flow.
Faster. Than
absolutely.
The
flow. If you go with the flow, then we will be dead. Yeah. So we need to beat the flow at least.
Yeah.
And it is because of the situation that we're in. Yeah. We produce steel in a densely populated environment. We don't do it somewhere in a desert or where no one cares, and in a society that has high demands from us. So we have a great urgency to innovate.
And huge expectations for the future.
Absolutely.
Natasha, is there some question you want to address to this table, maybe to Professor Max Welling?
Yeah, okay. I was just thinking about questions.
Okay. No, please.
Yeah, but I'm just sort of interested, like in the next, say, 5 years' time, because with chess and with Go, change happened actually really quickly once it did, and so actually when AlphaGo came along, then everybody's changing how they're doing it. Do you think, because with steel, it sounds like you've got kind of, as well as the actual doing the model, you've got kind of putting it into practice, communications, and you've got the social aspect and the people around you. Do you think it'll still be quick change with steel, or do you think it's a very good question?
It's funny. I had a meeting this morning, and someone said, "Let's make the plan for next year," and then someone else said, "Let's not." Because things are going so fast, let's make a plan for the next 3 months, and that is going to be as challenging as it is. So yes, I think the changes will be really, really fast. On the other hand, the system is intrinsically slow and focused on stability, so changing it, and that's a human aspect, nothing to do with the AI as such. So it will be a struggle to change it because people are, for very right reasons, quite risk averse. You can't play around with the steel plant. So let's try this. That was a mistake. No, you can't do that. So we need to be very careful, and the changes will happen, and it's up to us to make them happen fast.
What's interesting about this also, there's also a slight, I would say, shift happening where. So of course the problem is you have to build stuff, right? I mean, and that takes time. But you see the same thing for nuclear fusion. You have to build these massive reactors, and it takes 10 years to build a reactor, and so that's the time scale at which you evolve. However, more and more of that can actually be done in a computer. So you can actually simulate all of these processes in a computer, and now you can accelerate the time scale a lot, right? So you can go through many iterations of improvement in your computer where you simulate all the physics, and then once you have the design ready, you then build it, and then hopefully it works right from there. And it turns out that in airplane design, that people have exactly made this shift. So first, it's trial and error, fly something, see if it crashes, then it's, build things and measure things, and nowadays planes are completely designed inside a computer. And they just fly them to prove that it actually, whatever they computed was actually correct.
And does this help for a risk-averse company?
Certainly, but it's also especially the time scale at which you can design goes much faster. Of course, risk is also a thing because you can figure out all the risks, compute for all the risks, and it's much more cost effective as well.
Do you maybe have a question for Natasha?
Well, yeah, actually I do. So what fascinates me is the role of emotion in chess in some sense. So for the sort of a computer is completely emotionless, at least for now, right? And so when people play chess, do you have a sense of how much of a role emotions play in playing that chess? In other words, do they have anxieties or these kinds of things?
That does vary a lot between players, and I think some of the very best players are probably much better at controlling their emotions than the average player. I personally find it much harder to play. If you've lost 2 games in a row, then coming back for the next game after that, you kind of, there's a risk of going on tilt. So you kind of play these moves. I must win this one now. I've lost these 2, right. And emotions at the board I think it's a big aspect of chess and lots of sports. And I know people can kind of train to try and control their emotions better. I know there was a British cycling team where they did a lot of work with a psychologist on getting their emotions, getting there, because you've got a sort of fast and slow response in your brain, and just controlling that and getting your sort of instantaneous response to be more under control, which helped their kind of sporting performance. And I think they went on to do very, very well. Peter might know more about that kind of training.
He never loses 2 games in a row. So
that's true. You probably no experience of it at all.
No, but of course, I mean, if you look at competitive chess, it's played between 2 humans, and of course, psychology and emotions plays a incredible role, obviously, and such. I mean, you have to create under pressure, and it's not just about memorizing and such. This is to get a decent starting point. But when the match is decided, it's which of the humans who handle these situations best. I mean, the last 15 years, my professional job has been to prepare people for these matches in a theoretical sense. But all of them has, mainly been decided who performs best under maximum pressure and such. And that's why they are the champions and we are the helpers. That's where things happen. So, and that's how it should be. But we help them to try and maximize pressure and such in that way. But no, of course, chess is much more emotional than you'll think. And when Natasha says that, at the top level, maybe everything is under control. Well, I shouldn't give away too many secrets, but probably it's not. Yeah. But then you try to perform anyway. If you want to be the best, it's not about controlling your emotions. It's about succeeding even when things are out of control.
Yeah. Interesting. How's the match going, by the way?
I haven't checked my phone, which is extremely rare. So
Please check it.
Let me do it. Yeah. So. Okay.
must be a first that you ask someone.
Yeah, yeah.
Bring their phone.
It's Magnus is slightly better according to the computer, but actually very equal, but in a complicated way. So I think it can go either way. But also phones are actually as strong or even stronger than human beings. So when I said there was no such thing as ethics in chess, there actually is. Yeah. Cheating is a kind of problem. We check people like we check them in the airport because just having your phone is too big a tool of a help. Or also, this we haven't mentioned. I'm the coach of the world champion. He's playing a very important game now, and I'm not allowed to be in the vicinity because, I could sort of give computer advice like this. So chess is a very strange sport in that sense.
Yeah, good that you mentioned that. Is there something we didn't address yet that is important? Also, learning from each other world.
Again, a very broad question.
Yeah.
I think we need, and I think it's similar in chess and industry. It's a people business, and this whole idea, and I can't stress that enough, that we need to talk about this, and that we need to be open about it, and not create this sort of secret group of people in the know that will sort of drift away from everyone else. Is absolutely paramount importance, and I think chess can play a very important role there, because you are the petri dish, and your impact is much bigger than whether you play the rook on the H-line, or the pawn on the H-line ahead or not.
But that's actually what surprised me in a way, that even when it was so exciting for us, there was a lot of reluctance in it. It took a long time before people thought, okay, neural networks are exciting and such. No, they were very skeptical of them. It's only when you actually get hurt by your opponent using them that you start to realize, okay, I actually have to pay attention to this.
We should avoid the rest of the world having to go through the hurt bit.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
No,
you're actually dealing with real stuff.
Yeah, but otherwise people...
That's also what scared me a bit, what you said, that, we all think it's super exciting, but, at least us who plays chess doesn't fully live in the real world. Is it actually sort of ignored out there, and what can we do to help in that sense to, get more awareness of these things?
Of AI, you mean?
Yeah, and, when we talk about neural networks and how important AI is, I feel that quite often people look kind of oddly at you to some extent.
Yeah. So, well, yes, it is a very abstract topic, and that's why I think. But people are very smart. But the problem is that we don't get engagement with these kinds of concepts at an early age. And I think that's where the key is. We need to educate the new generations with these kinds of technologies, and then I think they're very agile and they'll understand it better. Yeah. But what's dangerous is that our politicians don't understand it. Yeah. I think that's much more dangerous.
Because education, then we're talking about years and years and years, and we don't have the time. No. So how are we coping with that aspect that Peter mentioned right here, right now?
Well, through these debates, I guess. But I don't know. We can, Robert Dijkgraaf gives beautiful lectures at a level that people understand. And so we can certainly do a few of those for machine learning and AI as well. Probably we should. Mm-hmm. So get national television involved and talk about it and lecture about it. And not as much in sort of this, often it's being... talked about as something that's very dangerous to the world, but we should just, technology has two aspects, and we should just basically show both of these and talk about both of these.
Well, I can tell that we do this at BNR. You were my guest there about absolutely. AI, and we talked a whole week about this topic with 5 top guests, and we do this a lot of times.
So you have 49 weeks to improve.
Yeah,
really. No, but it's that important. Yeah, I'm absolutely convinced for society and for the challenges that we're heading. It needs to be almost.
Yeah, but we have so much important topics.
No, you have one.
This week it was about more healthy living.
That's an AI subject.
Yeah.
No, but it's so all-encompassing. It's not something that is a little bit on the side, or maybe for a few people like Max, it's a full-time job, and for the rest of us, we can ignore it. It's really.
Well, Ernst Kuipers also is saying this is very important to improve our hospitals and
improve anything. Yeah.
the healthcare.
I think actually this is the motto of DeepMind, that first we solve intelligence, and like that we solve everything else. And that's basically what you.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's really.
We're going to round up, but maybe your last insight, call to action. Start with you, Menno.
Well, start studying. Everything is out there. It's all for free. If you can switch on a computer, you can do any training in machine learning at any level. There is the national AI curriculum that is very accessible. It's in Dutch even, so sorry, that's only for the Dutch speakers, but I'm sure there's an English version somewhere available as well. But do try to get a first grasp of understanding, because it is so much fun. That's the only reason you need. Yeah, it's also very important, etc., but it's so much fun to do. So I think I would urge you to do that.
And following on, learn what's interesting to you. I thought today was fascinating to get an insight, because I've seen the chess side, but to get an insight into steel and academics and climate change and how that's working. So don't be put off by, I don't want to learn the computer coding, right? You don't need to learn that. So you might be interested in how does the steel industry use AI or something like that. So read an article about it and have an event related to a particular industry or something like that. It doesn't need to be just AI.
But also the reflection of the two worlds.
Exactly. And get it linked in with the real world. And it could be to do with what the controls are, or what, so just what's interesting for you. I think that's what to learn.
Yeah. Your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is that, for the young people, I think there's one really good reason to learn AI at this point, which is, the world's going to change very quickly, because we are facing a number of really important challenges as a humanity, and Tata Steel is in the middle of it. We all need steel, but we also need a clean planet, and so we need technology to capture carbon. And I think artificial intelligence is going to help solve those problems. And if you're young, and you want to make an impact for the world, for the better, then that's a perfect, study for you to take on.
Great.
And mine will be that, I was extremely skeptical. I didn't think this would work. But, I was convinced by the result, and I was just very lucky it didn't get to hurt me professionally. So I would really, urge people to understand that this is actually real, and it works, and it can be used extremely positively.
Thank you so much. Thank all of you for being here. And also, thank you so much for our viewers for making time today to be with us. It was so nice to have you on the other side of the screen. Have a nice weekend. Bye.